Great. Excellent. Good evening and welcome to the Hollis School District's first public forum this year, presenting our facilities remediation projects. I'm a member of the Hollis School Board. My name is Tammy Farid, and I serve as the Hollis Board's representative to the Facilities Remediation Committee. For the past 8 months, we've studied the long-term infrastructure needs of the Hollis School District's 3 properties: Hollis Primary School, Hollis Upper Elementary School, and the real estate holdings at 4 Lund Lane, just next door to the primary school, which are currently leased to SAU 41 as administrative offices. We have been reporting on our progress regularly at monthly school board meetings and Hollis Budget Committee meetings. Even so, we also wanted to give residents the opportunity to dig into the details of our findings and recommendations in the more relaxed setting of public forums. Your questions and comments, whether here during our presentation or later by email, can help us further refine our planning, and we hope we will earn your support. Our plans will be finalized in the coming few weeks to meet state deadlines for warrant preparations. You'll see these recommendations formulated as warrant articles in the fiscal year 2021 warrant at the Hollis School District's annual meeting on March 11, 2020. Our presentation tonight includes 2 sets of recommendations, one covering the school buildings and the other the property at 4 Lund Lane. I'll give this presentation for its history and rationales, and architect Dave Ely will address the technical aspects of the project. We'll try to make our full presentation before taking questions, but please feel free to interrupt us if you hear or see items in the presentation that you've missed. These are our facilities committee members. David Ely is the architect at Windy Hill Associates. He hit a home run with the work he did on the Hollis Primary School during our energy project over the past couple of years, and we're thrilled that he was available to assist us with this project as well. Eric Reichert is chair of the Hollis Energy Committee. He has been involved with the energy project and now this continuation of the facilities remediation effort. Eric is a professional in the field of energy efficiency and renewable energy. He is a Hollis dad, and he has been instrumental in the work that you'll see tonight. Mike Levitt has served with the Hollis Energy Committee for several years. He was in at the inception of the energy study and implementation of the energy work that we've completed in 2018. He subsequently was elected to the Hollis Budget Committee and has served on this facilities committee in under both hats, if you will. John Penny, engineer of Penny Consulting Services, is a building science specialist and an energy specialist. He was instrumental in supporting the energy project that we completed in 2018. And continues to assist us with gathering data and understanding what our options are and what the efficiencies and paybacks might be. Andy Corey, superintendent of SAU 41. Kelly Seeley is the business administrator of SAU 41, and I just need to pause and say few can appreciate how much they have done to the benefit of this school district. Dick Henry of Dick Henry Energy Consultants was the lead consultant on our energy study and the implementation of that study over the past 3 years, and we are very thrilled that he's available to continue assisting us on the energy components of the facilities remediation plans that we're presenting tonight. And I'm the Hollis School Board rep. As I said, I started serving on the energy study group in 2016 and have been associated with representing the school board through the process since. As I mentioned, the first portion of our planning pertains to our 2 school buildings, the Hollis Primary School for students pre-K through grade 3 and the Hollis Upper Elementary School for students grades 4 through 6. These buildings serve approximately 650 students and 135 staff members daily throughout the school year, as well as staff and students for special summer programs. The buildings are in constant use from early in the mornings before the start of the school day until late in the afternoons and evenings for our after-school programming. The slide is one of two to go over the history and current conditions of the two school buildings. On this slide, we focus on the Hollis Primary School. It was built, as you see, in 1952 to begin with. I'm going to try to use the pointer. I don't know if this is visible. There we are. If you look at this photograph up in the corner, down here in the lower right is Silver Lake Road, Route 122, and therefore that's the front of the building, and here's the main entrance that most are accustomed to using. This section outlined in red, if you can see it, was built in 1952. In 1967, this section was added. 1978, two more sections, this area here, which is currently a classroom and part of the gym. And this section here was added also in 1978, which is 2 stories, and they serve as the second and third grade wings. No major infrastructure upgrades have been done since 1978 to this building. In fact, when we did our energy work, we found much of the wiring in the original building, and the electrical boxes were original to the original construction. Major energy upgrade in 2017-18, which I've referred to. For those who aren't familiar, in 2016, after the Hollis Energy Committee came to the school board with strong recommendations for looking at the energy functions of the different heating and electrical components of the two school buildings, we undertook a study for a year to investigate the needs of the two buildings beyond the immediate need of getting new boilers into the upper elementary, which were past their prime. In the process, we created a plan. We brought that to the public in March of 2017. We were grateful to receive funding from the taxpayers to carry out a 2-year, 2-phase project to upgrade energy infrastructure in the two buildings. During that process, we found many components beyond the scope of our plans that needed addressing. We had ongoing capital improvement plans that included significant components that needed funding, and because of contingencies that came up during the energy project, which we labeled H-STEP for Hollis Schools Thermal Energy Project, some of the items that we'd planned to do did not get done because of more pressing matters that were discovered once we started opening up the walls and ceilings. And that is what you're going to see tonight, is a combination of these major elements that have accrued over the years and decades. The current condition of the primary school, the structure is in excellent condition. As I said, there are numerous infrastructure elements found to need upgrades that have been identified through our rolling capital improvement plan, a 5-year plan that rolls ahead every year, and as well as during our H-STEP energy upgrades. Current conditions for funding are offering very low interest rates. That provides us an opportunity to combine these items into one cogent, cohesive plan that allows us efficiencies of scale and time and cost. Overall cost would be less by doing this project all at one time rather than piecemeal over the years. And also by doing all this work at once, we avoid the potential for disruptive and even more costly school interruptions. Our objective for any work we do is always to provide safe, reliable, and efficient school buildings for many decades to come, and to create an affordable capital improvement plan going forward that has minimal spikes and impacts on budgeting. This slide shows us the upper elementary school. If you look at the picture in the upper corner, you see the parking lot here. If you're familiar with the building, the entrance to the school is here. This center section was built in 1972. That was the original building. It's built on a hillside so that what you can't see is 2 floors below the parking level are also classrooms and other rooms like the gym. In 1997, there were additions made in wings on this end and the other end here, as well as sections in the front of the school and some in the back. Nothing has been touched in terms of any major infrastructure upgrades in the intervening years. In 2010, there was an emergency mold growth situation in the bottommost floor, that is down the back of the hillside, that required immediate and emergency remediation. It was very expensive. It was very disruptive to the educational program. And in that process of cleaning this and remediating it, a unit called the Munters unit, which is a massive dehumidification unit, was installed and continues to work to this day. And I'm pointing that out because it will come up again during the remainder of this presentation. The H-step energy project addressed numerous conditions in the upper elementary that were end-of-life energy upgrades, as well as some efficiencies. The current condition of the building is, again, the structure is in excellent shape, and as I said with the primary school, we've discovered numerous infrastructure elements during the H-step process, as well as those that we've kept on our 5-year rolling capital improvement plan that, put together under favorable funding situation, would make a sensible project to do now in order to avoid higher costs in the long run and avoid disruptions from sudden breakages and the kinds of last-minute costs that can end up costing us a great deal more than if we had carried them out with a better plan. This is an eye chart. I'm terribly sorry. It is an excellent, excellent document, but it requires a little effort to read. I'm actually going to go through this line item by line item because I feel it's worth it. This is our bond warrant planning chart. It is the final product of a long process that we used throughout the 8 months that our committee worked to arrive at this plan. In this chart, you can see on the far left the main project elements for the school remediation. You can see the next column, it lists the schools that are the school that the item is relevant to. Beside that is an estimated cost that we've developed through estimates given to us by various experts in the related fields. The following column is labeled as priority. We used a 5-point priority system throughout the study period to grapple with how necessary an element was. We tried not to censor ourselves in the early phases of the committee's work as we identified items that we would like to see done, that we need to see done, that are urgent, that are not urgent. And as this plan was developed, we settled on the priority 1 items as well as a few priority 2 items that made the cut. And we'll go through those and I'll explain why they're priority 1 and why priority 2 also ended up on this plan. The next 2 columns are labeled H-step and CIP, which is again capital improvement plan, and those simply mark what the source of the component is. Is it something that grew out of our H-step energy project that didn't get completed, or that we discovered even through that process, even though it wasn't part of the plan originally, or is that element that it's in the projects list something that comes off of our capital improvement plan? The next 9 columns tell you what the main benefits the item will bring to the district and its students. So let me start going through these. The first item that you see is air handler number 3. You can see it belongs to Hughes. Cost estimate $230,800. Priority 1, it grew out of our capital improvement plan. We've checked off energy savings, but mostly end of life. Air handler number 3 addresses the heating and air mixing needs of about 20% of Hughes or so, maybe a little more, at least. More, yeah. It is many, many, many years old. In the process of analyzing it and seeing what condition it's in, we found that it is absolutely at the end of its life. Were it to fail, we would have a catastrophic disruption to our education program at Hughes. It can't wait. It must be funded by one mechanism or another and be changed out. We will benefit from the changes when we replace it, not only in its performance and the safety and security of its performance, but also in the energy efficiency. It will allow us not only to use less energy because it will be new and better engineered, but also many of the parts of the current equipment have, for reasons we can't determine because it's so old, been modified in such a way that we can't really get the most benefit from it. And it's time it needs to be replaced. The second item is air source heat pumps, 19 of them, at the primary school for $297,000. This item comes from HSTEP, and it addresses energy savings and past end of life. During HSTEP, we intended to replace 13 unit ventilators in 13 classrooms here in the primary school building. There are also 6 additional rooms that we never did plan to replace the heating components for. That explains the number 19 on that line item. Because of contingencies that developed during the implementation of the energy program, we were sort of we made a conscious decision to set aside those 13 classrooms and look for funding the replacement of the unit ventilators with air source heat pumps at a future time. We found with the air source heat pumps that we did install in the primary school in the other more pressing areas, they are performing beyond our expectations. They are performing with tremendous efficiency. They have radically changed the comfort levels across the building. They have just taken away the distractions of rooms that are too hot or too cold or both at the same time on any given day, and they are paying off handsomely. It is a high priority for us to replace the unit ventilators, which at the same time have aged to the point that we can't get replacement parts. We are struggling when they fail to repair them, and they must be changed out as soon as possible. The third item is the architecture, engineering, and consulting services. We can't do any of this technical work with existing staff in the district. We require the services of Mr. Ely and the others that you saw listed on the committee, as well as the folks that we hire and contract beyond that to provide the technical input. Building maintenance systems on the next line at Hughes. So to run a building in modern times, there are digital devices that can oversee all the different components, or most of the different components, energy, lighting, heating, ventilation. And at Hughes, that piece of equipment needs to be replaced, and it needs to be upgraded in order to handle some of the other items that have never been plugged into it because it was never fully, completely installed. Like the Munters unit, dehumidification unit I mentioned before, like the air handler, and a number of other items that we'll be talking about this evening. It would cost approximately 25,000? The numbers are so small and I haven't got them memorized. Dollars there, and would pay for itself in energy efficiencies and our ability to control, there it is, I've got it. Our ability to control the building's performance, it's 35,000. The following line is the heating, replace the unit ventilators at Hughes. We have classrooms at Hughes that also are being heated by these ancient unit ventilators. They've performed well across their life. They are at beyond end of life, and they must be replaced. The estimated cost there is $223,000. Exterior lighting at the primary school is currently sodium, the orangish kind of lamps that we're used to seeing. They function, but they are not nearly as efficient in terms of brightness or in terms of just energy consumption as LED lighting, and studying the payback from investing in replacing them has convinced us that that's a high priority item, especially to get that brighter lighting around the building. The next item is fire panel phase 2 at the primary school. This is a capital improvement plan item. Phase 1 was accomplished this past year. Phase 2 is for this coming year. And because it's a $25,000 item, because it's of the highest priority, it's being carried out under the oversight of the fire chief, Chief Town, and needs to be done. It's a very large fiscal item, and we decided to include it in this plan. The gym and locker room ventilation item at Hughes. Mr. Penny studied how the gym at Hughes is heated and how the locker room is heated and how that air exchange, which of course in a gym and locker room is critically important, are managed. And he feels that the locker room having its own dedicated ventilation system is redundant, and that we could easily and with little expense utilize the ventilation system from the gym to take care of the locker room also. So we would save a great deal of money year over year, and that became a high priority because of the energy savings that we could accomplish. Insulation beam at Hughes. You might recall during the energy project, during H-STEP, our consultant, Dick Henry, working with the maintenance supervisor at Hughes, Ed Hinckley, discovered that there was an over 1,100 linear feet of gap between the walls and the roof. You can't see the sky from the indoors, but you can feel the air. We included in the H-STEP plan using a spray foam under very careful safety protocols to fill that gap along the long lengths that it existed. And then when we were done, completed the project, the January after the project was completed, there was a frozen pipe, and neither Dick nor Ed could figure out how there could be a frozen pipe after all the work that had been done at Hughes, and they found by crawling around that there was another 100-foot of gap that couldn't be seen because of the way the additions to the building had been constructed. And they brought a temperature gun, an infrared gun, to measure that temperature at that gap, and in January they found it was 7 degrees. So untreated air flowing into the building through an I-beam that was unprotected and uninsulated. So it's a high priority to get that 100-foot beam insulated so we can stop heating Hollis. Next item you'll see is the interior and exterior doors at the primary school, $265,000. We have been blessed with a lot of grant money and security money to begin to replace the classroom doors at the primary school with high security, high fire rated doors. There are many other doors that are important here, offices, etc., that also need replacing. In addition, the exterior doors have been treated for security, but there are additional security functions they could meet, but also there are significant energy functions that have a great deal of potential for saving the district money over many years. Dave has designed some very special double lock doors, etc., that would accomplish these goals, and we assigned that a priority one because of the security and the energy savings that we would gain from treating them. Next item is interior lighting at both schools, $450,000. This sounds like a lot of money because it is. It is an item that remained from the H-STEP energy project. If we could change out all the lighting in both buildings to LED lighting, number one benefit would be to change the lighting conditions for the learning environment. We can change the temperature of the lighting, meaning whether it's warmer or bluer, to optimize the learning environment for students and for staff. But also, LED lighting lasts forever. It's extremely cost efficient to run, and we would begin saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars monthly on our lighting bills by replacing all of the lighting in both schools. It has been shocking to discover how many lighting fixtures there are in these two buildings. There are how many? 1,100, 1,200?
I think so, yeah.
Many more. And as we replace them, they quickly pay for themselves in how much less they cost to run and how much less frequently the lamp replacements are required, because the LED lights are so efficient they last a great deal longer than even these fluorescent ones. The next item is the kitchen septic grease trap upgrade at the primary school, $28,000. The kitchen was part of the 1967 expansion, I believe, for the most part, and it has functioned super well ever since. But the code for how it handles grease is just about as old as the kitchen itself and is related to how old our septic system is. Our septic system, we learned a few years ago, is in excellent health, but it's now about 40 years old. We test the leach field every year. We have the tanks, of course, treated every year, and so far so good. But a septic system that old is bound to not last too much longer, and when the septic goes, our grandfathering for how the kitchen handles grease goes with it. We need plans in place to help us jump right in and replace these items in the kitchen in particular, and we are asking as part of the plan, of this remediation plan, $28,430 to create the technical planning so we're ready for any contingency having to do with the grease treatment in the kitchen and the septic, related septic. The next item is the famous Munters unit. We got it labeled as Munters Recommissioning and Balancing. The Munters unit was installed under near emergency circumstances. It is a giant compressor that pulls all the moisture out of the building, out of the lowest floor in the back of the building at the bottom of the hill where you can't see it from that aerial shot I showed you before. It is considered the saving grace that has kept the building healthy since it was installed, but it was installed to be on almost all the time. And what we found with our current study is it probably doesn't need to be on all the time. It almost most certainly doesn't need to be on all the time. And it isn't connected to our building management system the way it could be and should be to allow us to diagnose its performance and see if we can optimize it by reducing its performance some of the time when the air is already dry enough. With a small fee of $7,200, we expect that we can attach the necessary sensors and attach those to the new building management system that would allow us to integrate the performance of the Munters unit to the rest of the building's performance and be able to use data and evidence to optimize its performance and reduce the costs of running it. But so far it's run very well and we're very grateful for it. The next item is the phones and intercoms at Hughes, $25,000. If you follow the lines across the graph there to the columns, you'll see that the phones at Hughes are past their working life. They are past end of life. There are no more no more replacement parts. It's not being serviced anymore, and the building is struggling to have service through the phones. We need to replace them. They replace the Drury Lane catch basin, $7,700. This drains the area between the two schools. It's critically important. Putting it off just risks a catastrophic failure someday, and the timing is right to do it now under controlled circumstances. The next item, I'll just start with the price tag, $693,000. This is for a fire sprinkler system at the primary school. This school is old enough that it is not required to have a fire sprinkler system. When we discovered this through the HSTEP Energy project, and speaking closely with the fire chief in Chief Town, he has been asking for years and years that a system be installed at the primary school. It's not legally required, and it's not required by our insurance companies. However, the board and the staff, as well as the fire chief, believe it is prudent and necessary to add the sprinkler system. This requires a dedicated water source that would be added to the area probably just north of the school in the area we call the Turtle Garden. It would require the summer to install it. I want to put the public's mind at ease. All of our research shows that students are safe in the building, even in the event of a fire. Fire drills, all of the access and egress points protect them. Our insurance company has been consulted, and the typical scenario for a fire in a school is loss of property, not loss of life. We feel it's still the most prudent thing to do would be to add the sprinkler system in order to extend the life of this building by decades. The next item is underground oil tank removal. The primary school has always run on heating oil, and we continue to support the air source heat pump system with a with an oil burner. One of them is new. It's only about 5 years old and it's performing very well. It provides backup heat in the event of extreme cold, and it also provides backup heat in the event that the air source heat pumps should fail. The underground tank, however, is extremely old, and it is reaching an age where the state will require us to remove it. In the process of it's an expensive step, $40,000 to remove it. We are facing this step whether we want it or not. During the study of this issue, it's been determined that it might be ideal to replace it not with another oil tank, but with a propane tank, and to upgrade our current furnace to propane functions in order to take advantage of the superior heating power of propane, the superior price of propane, because we're able to piggyback onto the town's propane purchases and the upper elementary's propane purchases to bring down our per gallon price. So you'll see that the following item, propane tank purchase, $19,000, is related to the underground oil tank removal at the primary school. The next item down, the boiler consolidation, propane and hot water, $116,800. It's also directly related to these issues. We had, as part of our H-Step Energy project, the plan to consolidate the boilers in this building, the primary school, because one is redundant and very old, and we'd like to use the space that it's in for other functions. The hot water, the propane, and the boiler consolidation are all related to one another. The next item down is the heating control system, wall-mounted, $15,900. Our air source heat pumps are working beautifully. We'd like to link them to our brand new building management system. Again, this is a digital device that the building maintenance and administration use to moderate the functions of across the building. We did not have a chance to connect the heating elements to it, and this is what we want to do in order to reduce costs and reduce any redundancy. We would like to optimize the performance of our heating system in the building. The next item looks scary. It's not. Asbestos abatement, removal and repair, $20,000. When the primary school was built, windows were built on the interior of classrooms from the hallways. They were, all those years ago, glazed with an asbestos-based seal. The state and the administration have been monitoring that asbestos openly for many, many, many years, and we are assured that the children, the staff, anyone who comes into the building is quite safe. It's deeply sealed into the glazing of those windows. The windows are not desirable. They are not good for our security plan, and we want them to be removed. And in the process, they'd have to also remove the asbestos glazing with specialists who do asbestos abatement, and we estimate $20,000. You can see I've crossed now into the priority 2 items. This isn't an imminent failure. The windows are not failing. The glazing is not failing. But because of security protocols, we'd like to make those walls opaque instead of having windows in them. We feel like that's an important security step, and it made the cut even though it was priority 2. Also priority 2 that made the cut, create a door between the first grade classroom just inside the front doors of the primary school and this library that we're in now. That classroom has only one entrance and exit door. Security protocols recommend 2, and that's a $10,000 cost that is part of our capital improvement plan. And we felt that because it's a permanent part of the building, it belongs in this remediation plan. The next item, insulation above the cafeteria at Hughes. These next 3 items are all for Hughes. When the addition was built at Hughes, the roof over the kitchen and that whole front section that you see when you pull up in front of the building was left pretty much uninsulated. We lose a lot of heat. Think of the kitchen getting as hot as it gets, and there's no insulation in the roof. For $29,500, we insulate the roof. It's a permanent part of the building, and we reap the energy efficiencies benefits from that in our bills. The next item, insulation EFIS. EFIS is, I can never remember the words that EFIS belongs.
Exterior insulation and finish system.
There you have it from our architect. If you look around Hughes, you'll see among the windows these pale-looking panels. They almost look like stucco. Between them and the interior walls of the classrooms, there is nothing. So all that heat is being, migrating right through those panels. $65,000 for insulation. Once again, we reap the benefits over the decades that follow in the energy efficiency benefits and lower energy bills. The next item, also at Hughes, the kitchen exhaust upgrade, variable speed fan. Currently, there's a giant fan that exhausts the cooking environment from the Hughes kitchen. It's turned on early in the morning and it's turned off after lunch, and it goes one speed, very, very fast, very, very high, and it sucks a lot of energy, regardless of the need in any 1 hour or the other. The recommendation for $37,700 is to replace it with a variable speed that has built into it sensors that can detect steam, smoke, heat, cool, and change the speeds to match the need of the moment. That would be, again, a cost savings in energy efficiency, where we're not running a machine at high pitch for many, many hours unnecessarily. These kind of elements affect something that's very difficult to describe, but is maddening to write checks for, and that is our electricity bills. We are finding that there's an element called a demand charge that the electric company uses to set the monthly rate that bills are paid at for commercial properties like ours, and that demand charge has to do with spikes. So if there's even a half-hour spike in usage, that sets the rate level for the month. We've had Eric Reichert, our chair of the Hollis Energy Committee, John Penny, building science engineer, Dick Henry, many people using sensors, using detectors, just simply watching the equipment around the buildings function to try to figure out where these peaks are coming from. And it seems what's happening is that there are numerous little pieces, equipment, that sometimes all at once all pile on at the same time and produce these spikes. So the exhaust fan is one of them. Some of the hot water heater at Hughes turned out to have a manual timer that was set for later in the morning, and by turning it back to earlier in the morning, we pulled it out of that demand charge peak. There are small little difficult to track down elements like this kitchen exhaust fan that probably are almost certainly contributing to these demand charge spikes, so that we might see a very significant drop in our monthly rate if we could reduce the demands on the system that occur at certain times of day, as I've described. The last item on this chart is a contingency of 10%. We like to be extremely transparent. The previous costs I've outlined came from cost estimates. Some of them do have contingencies built into them, particularly the services line item farther up from the architects and the consulting services, et cetera. Some of these items don't include contingencies, as well as the overall plan. We've learned that one should have about a 10% contingency. The subtotal without the contingency line item is in the $2.8 million range, so 10% is $280,820. Total for what I've presented so far, $3,108,000, $3,108,900. It's a very large number, but it addresses a great many very necessary upgrades and will reduce overall costs over the many, many years that these elements, which are infrastructure elements, will serve us as a district. You'll see an item lower down on this chart, SAU barn remodeling and saving. That we'll go over after we go through the schools. Thank you for your patience with this long, slow process of going through this chart. But this is the heart and soul of the project, and I think it's very important for voters to really understand how much work has gone into a clear understanding of the needs, the costs, and the benefits to the students, the staff, the administration, and the taxpayer. This table, believe me, I won't go through all of it. If you look at the top, it says as of November of 2018, Hollis School District had $1.4 million of capital improvement plan items on the 5-year plan, which did not include numerous items I just went over. The major items left out of H-STEP, new items of concern like the kitchen and the septic, and the research costs from vendors. If you look at the table itself, you'll see some items, wrong button. You'll see the projects column with numerous items, the schools they pertain to, and the years we expect these items to be funded for if from our current point of view. The green items are items that have gone into the remediation plan I just went over. The remaining items we deemed as a committee, both administration, specialists, et cetera, as not appropriate for the remediation plan. This list, including items that were in the remediation plan over 5 years ending 2023, if you can look at this total down here, is $335,000, $432,000, $396,000. Again, it adds up to $1.4 million. These are costs that are not avoidable over that period of time. So in this presentation, this slide, it further tries to reveal our thinking as a committee as to what elements, what items, what components are needed and how needed are they. Of the items I went through in that first long chart, priority 1 items that we considered critical, items that are end of life, code required, or functionally deficient. And you can see that we've got a column for Hughes and a column for the primary school. Also, priority 1, significant items, items that now have limited life and or could lead to catastrophic failure. Also, priority 1, important items that provide needed improvements and or efficiencies. For example, they would pay for themselves in quick order and continue serving for a great deal longer. Priority 2 items, we labeled those valued, items that provide very long-term improvements. You can see at Hughes, critical items are air handler number 3. Again, it deals with at least 20% of the school, and it is not eminently failing, but will if we don't change it soon. And the next item is replace the unit ventilators. These are beyond end of life. They are individual heaters in classrooms, and they cannot wait. Beam insulation for $7,000. We seal up a beam that can transmit deep cold across an open space directly into the building. The Munters recommissioning, again, the Munters unit is the giant dehumidifier that needs to be optimized in order not to be run all the time at great expense. Significant at Hughes, the building maintenance system upgrade. If we can run the entire building from one digital device that shows us operations and feedback loops, we are able then to optimize our costs and benefits. Phone intercom, the phone is as old as anyone can remember, and it requires to be changed. Important at Hughes, interior lighting. Once again, the quality of the lighting will vastly improve the learning environment, and the lighting will pay for itself in a very short period of time and last a very long time. Gym and locker room ventilation, as I went over that earlier, the ventilation for the gym is excessive and can be easily vented to or rerouted to ventilate the locker rooms also and save us from paying too much for that effort. Valued at Hughes, insulate those exterior panels around the windows to prevent us from heating Hollis through the walls. Insulate above the cafeteria roof, the same, and the kitchen exhaust hood variable speed upgrade. At the primary school, critical is the underground oil tank removal with a propane replacement, the boiler consolidation and conversion to propane, air source heat pumps in 19 remaining classrooms, the sprinkler system, fire panel phase 2, interior exterior doors. We believe that these items across Hughes and the primary school are critical, end of life, code required, or functionally deficient. At the primary school, replace the catch basin on Drury Lane and prepare for the septic and grease trap upgrade that's imminent, although stable at the time, for the time being. Also, as important items, the heating control system at Hughes in order, again, to centralize controls over the heating system in the building, interior lighting and exterior lighting down here at the primary school also would benefit from quality of light and the cost efficiencies. The valued items are the asbestos abatement and the removal of the windows that are inside the building that we believe are a security improvement, and then the door between that one first grade classroom and this library room, also for security purposes. A summary cost breakdown based on the chart we just went through. Critical items at Hughes, $534,586. Critical items at the primary school, keeping in mind that the fire sprinkler system is almost $700,000 of this, is $1,522,964. Significant items at Hughes, $67,700. Significant items at the primary school, $28,430. Important items at Hughes, $256,800. Important items at the primary school, $255,400. The valued items at Hughes, $132,000. Valued items at the primary school, $30,000. Building totals, Hughes, $991,000. Building totals for the primary school, $1,836,794, which again includes $700,000 for the fire sprinkler system. The combined totals, $2,828,080. 10% contingency is $280,820. Project total, $3,108,900. The staff at the SAU, the staffs of the buildings, the experts on our committee, board members who have reviewed all this material have asked me explicitly to restate that not doing this project does not mean these elements can just go away. We are seeking a means of combining them into one project to take advantage of inexpensive money through the loans, through either a bond or municipal lease purchase, and in order to optimize the efficiencies of our staff to implement them all together so that we can take the greatest advantage of our opportunity. On the second bullet item at the bottom of the slide, you can see costs could easily reach $600,000 a year for over 5 years, compared to about $300,000 a year for bond payments, because of course the bond stretches out beyond 5 years. In this summary, this is the leftovers from one of the previous slides I showed you. This is a summary of the 2018 table of capital improvement plan items that were not included in the facilities remediation plan. You can see that the playground surface at Hughes, we did that this year. 2019 is taken care of. 2020, these are major, this chart shows major items over $20,000. There's a separate chart that we're not showing in a slide for items under $20,000 each. And for FY 2020, that's about $70,000. For FY 21, items not in that plan include a water system evaluation for 2 different elements of that system that approximate $100,000. We have a $4,000 playground maintenance, $35,000 for the library roof, which is needs to be addressed. Fencing around the primary school, $21,000. We had some damage from a tree fall during a storm earlier in the year, and other aging-related issues. The classroom floors, you can see across these 3 years, both buildings, primary school and Hughes, we're entering a phase where we need to address old classroom floors that need to be remediated. These aren't elements that we are 100% sure we are going to be scheduling for those years. This is our capital improvement plan, and it's constantly being revisited. These are items that we felt belong in the realm of building maintenance. They might be fundable in part or in full through the maintenance trust fund that we utilize because the state allows us to retain some unassigned funds at the end of each fiscal year, if there is anything, to hold for building maintenance. We have used that trust effectively, and we do that with warrants and hearings. So that's one way we intend to deal with some of this, as well as through the regular budgeting process. So these items were deemed they didn't make the cut of priority 1 or priority 2. And that is the completion of our presentation for the school buildings remediation plan. I think it might make more sense, rather than go on to our 4 Lund Lane plan, to turn this over to Dave Ely and allow him to make his technical comments.
Sure, I'd be happy to, thank you.
And you wanted me to
You
go to
back
slide 8?
Yeah, that one up.
Oops, sorry, this one?
Nope, next one, right there,
There we
thanks.
go.
Tammy, you did a great job of
Thank you.
going through all this, and next slide, number 8.
I
And
beg-
what I'm going to say is going to be a little bit redundant from what you've said, but
Please do.
I'd like to go through it anyway. But a couple of things I'd like to point out first. There is a cost to doing nothing. We have to understand that.
That's correct.
We have equipment that's at the end of its life, and it could be breaking down any day, and we would much rather schedule a replacement or repair of the equipment rather than having to do emergency repairs, which are always more expensive, done by less qualified people, and never in a good time. So another goal for doing all of this is to extend the life of our buildings. These buildings are old. They could be considered by some to be at the end of their life, but the bones are good, the structure is good. We'd like to keep the buildings. The cost of building a new school right now can approach $300 or more per square foot. The school that we're sitting in right now is over 50,000 square feet, so that would be a cost of $15 million to recreate this school. What we're proposing is a lot less than that, and we hope to gain 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years more out of these schools by doing this work. Okay, I'd like to just go over these points again. Tammy's already mentioned these things, but I'd like to just reiterate them. Maybe I'll fill in something that hasn't been said. So first is air handler number 3. That sits on the roof at Hollis Upper Elementary School. It's been jury-rigged over the years to continue to operate. Ed has done a great job of keeping it operating, but it has its problems. It goes in unoccupied mode at times and shuts down, and when that happens, cold air can actually come into the building and downstream through the pipes, through the conduit, and can freeze up the variable air volume boxes, which are below that. When that happens, we could break water pipes, and then in the music room or the cafeteria or the office area, there could be a disastrous flood. So this is very critical to get this done. If we have the new air handler, we could actually add cooling at a later date. We don't have it in the price to do it right now. We've been trying to be frugal about that. But if we do decide at a later date that it's just too warm, we can add cooling. The current system also is not tied in. The current unit is not tied into the building management system, so the new one would be. The next item at Hughes is to replace the unit ventilators. As Tammy said, these are at the end of their life. Parts are hard to come by. They could be breaking down. We don't want them to break down on a cold winter day when all of a sudden we can't put heat in the room, so these need to be replaced. We considered replacing these with air source heat pumps, just as we've done here at the primary school, but it was considered to be more fortuitous up at the upper elementary school to just use new unit ventilators. The beam insulation, Tammy, again, you did a great job of describing that. We found that beam is pretty well decoupled from the insulation, and it's a steel beam, and steel, as some of you may know, has a propensity to conduct heat and cold. So if there's no insulation between the beam and the inside of the building, it'll conduct the cold right through there, and that's what it's doing right now and freezing up certain places. The Munters. Actually, work is underway on the Munters unit for recommissioning. We have to get in touch with the Munters folks to get some information from them, but when the building maintenance system is upgraded, it'll be tied into that. And when it's finished, when the recommissioning is finished, it won't be running all the time. It'll be running when it's needed, and we've done the research to find out just exactly when that is, and we'll have some sensors in the building to know when it needs to come on. And this unit was originally put in to prevent mold.
Right.
There was a mold issue down there, and it's done a great job of preventing that. But as Tammy said, it runs all the time, and it doesn't need to run all the time. So it's pretty short money to get this thing recommissioned and get it running properly, and we'll save a lot of money by only running it a third of the time rather than 100% of the time. At Hollis Upper Elementary, the building management system, that'll be tied to Munters, air handler number 3, which is going to be replaced, new controllers for each VAV, variable air volume box, with the heating system, and we're considering a new JACE management system. And that'll afford us better communications with all the existing equipment in the building, which will reduce our energy load. Hollis interior lighting, again, Tammy said this, we'd be going from fluorescent to LED lighting. LED lighting has much better control over color temperature. We can make the classrooms much more conducive to learning. Again, this goes to comfort. Not to belittle the fact that we will be saving possibly $50,000 from Eversource on our electric bill. The locker room ventilation, right now the locker room is bringing in cold, fresh air and conditioning it for the locker room, and we're bringing in cold, fresh air for the gymnasium. Our idea is to take the fresh air from the gymnasium, which is kept at a lower temperature, take that air from the gymnasium and recondition it for the locker room before exhausting it. That'll precondition the air and lower our energy bills. And again, this is a very short number, very easy to do, and doesn't cost much and saves quite a bit of money. Another thing that this is going to do is help prevent mold. Anytime we can help prevent mold, that's going to be in our benefit. Insulate the EFIS panels, exterior insulation and finish system at Hughes. These are the panels that run across the top of the building. They look like a cement panel. It's because they are a stucco panel, cement stucco panel. They are insulated just a bit because exterior insulation and finish system by its name is an insulation. There's 2 inches of insulation there. However, that insulation is decoupled from the building, and there's a vent behind that insulation, which renders it pretty much useless. So our plan is to take those panels off, insulate behind them, and then reclad, probably not with exactly the same type of cladding, but something that resembles it very closely. Hughes kitchen exhaust upgrade. Again, this system runs all the time. It comes on in the morning and runs all day. We can avoid the spikes. We can run it when it needs to be run and greatly reduce our energy load. Moving over to Hollis primary system, the oil tank removal and boiler consolidation are 2 different items, but they kind of are tied together. We'd like to remove the oil tanks and go to propane. We have a danger with the existing underground oil tanks. They are not properly double walled as the state mandates right now. They're the older tanks. To take them out and put in the new tanks is extremely expensive. It would make a lot more sense to take those tanks out, put in propane tanks, which are much safer, and then upgrade the boilers from oil to propane and save the money on the energy also. Hollis Primary School air source heat pumps. As Tammy said, we had 13 classrooms that we didn't get around to doing last time, and 6 more that were not on the list originally. They're all on unit ventilators right now. These unit ventilators are at the end of their life. Parts are not available. They could break down any time, and we could be faced with another situation of having a classroom with no heat in the middle of winter. So we'd like to switch over everything to the air source heat pumps. And just a word about air source heat pumps and the boiler. It sounds redundant to have both the air source heat pumps and the boiler. It is a little bit redundant, and that's because we'd like to have a backup system for the air source heat pumps. In addition, we're going to be using the boilers for our domestic hot water, for hand washing and for the kitchen. The sprinkler system. I've had many conversations with the fire chief about the sprinkler system. Every time I go to him with a new project here at the primary school, he says, well, I'd like to approve that, but I'd really like to see the sprinkler system go in first. And I think he's at the end of his rope. I don't think we're going to get another project approved here at Hollis Primary System before we get a sprinkler system installed. The building is large enough that it needs it. We can compartmentalize the building and by code kind of get around that, but in essence, we really need to have that sprinkler system put in here. Hollis Primary School interior and exterior doors. We started to do the upgrade for the doors last year. We did quite a few of the interior doors, as Tammy said. The doors have now a narrower vision panel in them, which makes them a lot safer than they were. If there were ever to be an incident where somebody were to come into the school wanting to do damage or worse, they can't see into the classroom as well. They can't get their hand through the glass on the door. It's just a much safer system. So we have more doors to do. We have the exterior doors, which, as Tammy said, will increase energy efficiency, which I'm very much in favor of. And
they also protect your planning that you showed us in your drawings also allow the students a little more safety in the way that the double sets of doors
Correct.
protect against rambunctious behavior.
There is new technology which we can take advantage of. Hollis Primary School heating control system. Right now, when we installed the air source heat pumps, we did wall-mounted units which are controlled in every classroom. We'd like to convert that to a central control system. That doesn't mean that the teachers won't have control in the classroom. They will still have control of the temperature to a certain degree, but we'll also have control of these units from a central station. If the teacher leaves at the end of the day, we can set the units back for a weekend or for a vacation period, and that will save more energy. Hollis interior lighting, I've already discussed that. We can go from the fluorescents to the LEDs, saving energy, making the classrooms more comfortable, making them a much better learning environment. Exterior lighting, as Tammy said, we have high-pressure sodium lights out there right now. They're a poor choice for lighting in today's environment. They're not as bright, they're not a good color temperature, and they use a lot of electricity. So going to LEDs will save all that, and that's not a very expensive thing to do. And I think we even talked about having that work done by the staff in-house instead of hiring a consultant for that. The asbestos abatement, as Tammy said, is the glass, which is puttied with asbestos putty, and that's an easy thing to remediate and not very expensive. And by taking them out of the corridors, again, we're providing more security to the classrooms. Create an interior door between the first grade classroom and the library. That would actually be on this wall right here for security reasons.
One thing you missed earlier up on the significant line is the septic and grease trap upgrade.
I did. You talked about that pretty well.
Okay, all right, good.
That's in the kitchen area, and it needs to be done. The grease trap right now is above the floor oh no, it's outside, is it?
Yeah.
It's outside, and it doesn't get cleaned out as often as it should, and I'm afraid we may be allowing grease to flow into our septic system.
But we are within code, and the performance is checked regularly, and so far for 40 years it's been working just fine. But we recognize that if the septic system finally ages out, that will trigger our code changes. So far, the septic system has not had any problems. We did have a problem a couple years ago with the failure of a distribution hub, but that was just a mechanical problem not related to the grease trap situation. But we want to be prepared because it would be a major emergency if anything happened in an untimely way. So that line item is to allow us to prepare so we're ahead of the game.
We don't want to be blindsided by any of these
Exactly.
repairs. We want to fix them in advance so that we don't have to close school down because something broke that we could have fixed in advance.
Exactly. And if we can fund and carry out these elements all within the if the town votes at the district meeting to support this plan, as again there could be some tweaks to it before we completely finalize the warrant. It's so much money, $3.1 million, but that gets shared across a 10 or 20-year bond or municipal lease purchase, and we're studying that for cost benefits as well, so we haven't got the funding vehicle settled yet either. Our business office is very closely studying our options. This distributes the cost more evenly across multiple generations of students. It prevents the annual cost for any 1 year of being terribly high, and it avoids huge spikes in any given year, say the fire sprinkler system 1 year, and the Munters unit another year. 1 year it could drop a little bit, and another year it could spike, and then we could have an emergency which eats up our contingency line item or eats up our unassigned fund balance. So when we are able to smooth those spikes by pre-planning and getting all this work done ahead of time so that most of the infrastructure is really quite new, quite fresh, we reduce our maintenance costs, we reduce our surprised, blindsided, Sunday plumber, I like to call it, costs. We vastly improve the learning environment for our students. We vastly improve the economies of time that our staff has to put in to dealing with our infrastructure issues. And taxpayers get a smoother annual budget process that allows both the taxpayer and the district to plan more accurately, more reliably. So we feel that given the low cost of money, I mean, this year, consumer price index is around 2.1% in our region. Last year it was 3.2%, and right now it's looking like funding could come in below 3%. If we get funding at or near the consumer price index for a 10 or 20-year vehicle,
Right.
that is a remarkable opportunity to sweep up these big projects under the guidance of a single expert like Dave Ely here and the other people that we've talked about who are experts in their fields, and really give our schools a rejuvenation that could last for generations.
One other thing I'd like to mention that we haven't talked a whole lot about is comfort. All of these renovations will increase comfort, and comfort is really crucial for the learning environment. It does several things. It keeps the students' attention longer, and it also reduces absenteeism, both among the students and the teachers. So comfort is crucial here, and that's the lighting, and it's the mechanical system, and it's the air. All of that goes to...
Right. Very much so. We know from the study that we did during prior to the energy project, the HSTEP project, that some of our classrooms in October were 90 degrees, and some of our classrooms were 54 degrees, all on the same day. We had students in the winter coming in summer clothes because their classrooms got so hot, and students wearing their coats all day in their classrooms because their classrooms were so cold. It wasn't through negligence, it was just through very antique infrastructure that we could not control any better, and that's one of the strongest driving factors of what took place with HSTEP, and for similar reasons we're looking at going ahead with this plan. So since we don't have questions this evening, I'm going to flip over to the same pattern, less talking, I think, relative to our property at 4 Lund Lane. We're calling it the Barn Reclamation Project because the barn on that property is the largest component of this plan. A more than 100-year-old farmhouse and its connected barn sits at right on Silver Lake Road, Route 122, just north of the Hollis Primary School across a small creek. The Hollis School District has owned this property outright as an asset for not many years. I've actually can't quite say when we procured it, but since 2003, the school district has leased the house as office space to SAU 41. They are our current tenant. But who is renting that building is not related to our ownership of it. It is an asset of the Hollis taxpayer under the auspices of the Hollis School District. We as real estate owners need to address this property. It is, the barn in particular is failing as a structure, and again, thanks very, very much to Dave Ely here for being not the first, probably the third or fourth architect to be consulted on this property over many, many years, and the timing and Dave's talents and skills are such that we are ready to propose to our fellow taxpayers in town a project to reclaim the barn and allow us to expand our real estate holding. If you can see this picture on this slide, at the upper left, there is the barn in its current condition. You can see antique stone granite blocks that hold it up, and I'll show you later close-up pictures of the condition it's in. Over here on the far right is an interior. You can see the very old hand-hewn timbers. The bones of the barn seem to be in good enough shape that we believe we can retain those and hold some of that historic value in the building. The middle picture here is the house and its connecting section extension here that serve as our current offices. The barn, as it currently stands, we have some riffraff in there, just some junk. There's nothing of any real importance stored there because the building itself is exposed to animals, to the weather, to climate conditions, so it's used for almost nothing at all. But under this remediation plan, the barn would be converted into a state-of-the-art office center, and this is a digital rendering that Dave Ely prepared for us. The history of Foreland Lane, it was built circa 1900. It's been owned by the Hollis School District for a number of years and rented to SAU 41 since 2003. Just for those who might be wondering what SAU 41 means, School Administrative Unit. The state of New Hampshire organizes the state's public schools into school administrative units. We are number 41. This is a state-mandated administrative oversight structure. It's not directly related to our cooperative school district that we share with Brookline, but SAU 41 does administer the schools in Hollis, the schools in Brookline, and the schools of the Hollis-Brookline Cooperative School District. SAU 41 currently utilizes 5,612 square feet in the farmhouse. The space in the barn, like I said, is just a few pieces of detritus. The rental revenues that we generate from rental from the SAU's renting of the farmhouse as office space are annually brought to the voters at our annual meeting. We tend every year to ask the voters to allow us to put the full value of the rentals, which this year are $24,000 and change, into a building maintenance trust, which is overseen by the Hollis School Board through a hearing process with the Hollis Budget Committee. We are able to spend that money on maintenance of the building each year. Current conditions, can you see those photographs? I hope so. This is a photograph of a bathtub in the second-story bathroom, and this is across the teeny tiny bathroom, the other bathroom fixtures in there. The bathtub is used to house cleaning supplies because the building has 0 closets of any kind. We have 16 full-time staff members working in the offices, in the pass-through spaces. We have one employee whose office is essentially the stairs landing on the second floor there. And these 16 people utilize 2 worn, small residential bathrooms. We do have a conference room in that center section that connects the main house to the barn. It is an extremely tiny room. I can tell you that when 8 people are in there, somebody has to draw the chair that has its back to the window, which means they freeze in the winter even though the room is warm, and freeze in the summer because that's where the window unit air conditioner is. It's a drawing straws who gets that unlucky seat. And the other chairs are up against the walls. Even though the conference table is very narrow, it's extremely cramped and is used frequently throughout the week because it is the sole public meeting room in that building. As you can see from the bathtub supply storage space for anything in the building is extremely limited. Here are Dave Ely's drawings. I know they're tiny. There are slides up ahead that treat each floor separately. I'm sorry they're small. If you look, this is the footprint of the house, first floor. This is the footprint of the connecting section, first floor. And this is the barn as it would appear renovated, first floor. Over here in the lower section of the slide, the same footprint, but for second floor. The barn, as upgraded in this proposal, would provide 6 additional offices, multi-use conference room, and event space. So you can see here loose chairs for board meetings, for meetings of various kinds, including available to the public. Protected long-term document storage, I'll touch on that in just a moment. And of course, we would get to retain the historic building that is the barn. I think most people recognize that these very antique barns have a lot of community value and cultural value, and we would like to be able to retain the barn if at all possible. And according to our multiple architects who've looked at it, but most especially Dave Ely recently, the barn can be saved for the most part. The farmhouse would get very little treatment, but just enough to make it more useful to us. We'd have, with a few changes in how the bedrooms are configured and how the pass-through spaces are configured, we would have improved access and security for existing offices. Many of these rooms have doors that work, but the doors can't be closed because then staff can't move out of the room behind them. which serve as their offices, and I'll get into some of the details of that later. Long-term storage of documents, bathtub removed to gain a hallway, although that would, of course, cause that small bathroom to become very tiny, but our staff doesn't mind. They just need access and egress space, and increased storage space. Currently, again, we have 16 people housed in this farmhouse. One of the bedrooms houses 3 account specialists, the payables and receivables, in one room with their desks, their computers, their file cabinets, their supplies. In the next room over, which only has one exit door, so the account specialists have to keep their door open too, are our 2 assistant business administrators responsible for more than $50 million of funding every year. These folks are 5 people housed in 2 upstairs bedrooms. In the next space over on the stairs landing, with a door that can close, but again blocks the stairwell from others, is our HR assistant. We have a bedroom that serves as the office for our business administrator. We have a bedroom that serves as the office for our human resources administrator. And those all have one tiny bathroom to access. Downstairs on the first floor, our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, our assistant superintendent for student services, our office manager, our IT manager, a director who oversees the digital needs of the entire SAU and all the school districts, as well as another IT person, all share one tiny bathroom. Each of them are either in a bedroom, in a pass-through space, or in a space that can't close the doors because that's the only way anyone can get to the one tiny bathroom. Over the years, the SAUs throughout New Hampshire have been forced to hire more and more employees to deal with the mandated responsibilities of documentation of services through labor laws, through student privacy laws, etc. This is a summary of the project. It's very brief. We propose a project cost of approximately $1.4 million. It would entail funding through the March 2020 warrant, through its own warrant article. The estimated project completion would be by the end of the summer of 2022. We are still studying the cost benefits of either a bond or a municipal lease purchase. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that's still under study. We're working with the budget committee in town to see what our options are and where the cost benefit would be best. We anticipate increased rental revenues. Current revenues are $23,970 per year, with increased square footage, significantly increased. We should see a substantial increase in rental revenues for that property. And not insignificant is in the anticipated increase in the real estate value of this asset owned by the Hollis taxpayers. In 2013, including the field that is just beside these buildings that I've just described to you, the 2013 estimate of the property value was $830,000. We would separate the fields in order from the building property in order to retain the fields for the purposes of the schools. So that figure isn't automatically going to increase from that point. But obviously, if 2013 the estimate was $830,000, we would expect to see a significant increase in the asset value of the improved property. If we don't do any of these items, or if we delay them, these are an analysis of some of their options. If we delay the project in whole, cost increases over time. We learned with the H-STEP energy project that even a 2-year delay can increase costs through labor, through materials costs, just through consumer price index increases significantly. Continuing to wait continues the degradation of the barn's foundation and frame. We have a very significant document storage issue that has plagued the SAU and the Hollis School District for years, and we've been slowly remediating it, but we're at a point where we've got to do something dramatic. In the attic of the farmhouse, we are storing thousands upon thousands of paper files that we are required by law to retain. In some cases, under certain circumstances, the school district is required to retain a file for 60 years. These are labor laws that cause us to retain files. These are employee files, student files that we're required to retain. And they are sitting in properly documented, well inventoried in boxes in the attic of the farmhouse. It's a weight level that floor is not rated to hold. The fire chief and our architect and others feel that our employees are safe, but it really must be remediated. So the barn project would include a basement level storage space that would be appropriate for the importance of these documents. New construction on the site. Let's imagine that the voters decide they wanted to raise these buildings and build something brand new. The design and construction costs would be very, very high. It would take years to plan and bring to a vote. Meanwhile, we have these pressing matters of space weighing on us. The cost increases over time pertain to this option as well. Document storage has to go off-site if we don't remediate the barn basement as we plan. Critical staff overcrowding, we are just at the bursting point. The barn demolition, if that were to happen through new construction on that site, would be a real loss to the Hollis historic building inventory. If we were to try to relocate this utility off-site, we have done a recent study of close by options, and we did a study in 2015, which I have a slide to show you, of other options, significantly higher rents, which would impact the Hollis taxpayer directly because we would pay for any rents that we would have to move this administrative staff off. Few appropriate properties in the Hollis Brookline vicinity. We've been studying that in the last few weeks. And the likely loss of the barn, again, a Hollis historic building that we would love to retain. And this is a very brief presentation, and I have some backup materials concerning the barn. Here is a somewhat helpful, I'm sorry it's so small, but it's a big building, floor plans of the 3 floors as they currently exist at 4 Lund Lane. Dave Ely prepared these for us. So this is the 2nd floor of the house as it's configured now. This is the middle section where we use as the main entrance and the office manager's desk, as well as the conference room here. And then this is the empty barn with nothing in it. Here is the 1st floor with the offices the way they're configured. You can see the stairs that lead up to the 2nd floor. Here's where our office manager sits in the conference room. There is nothing upstairs because there is no upstairs in the Passover, and I apologize for not pointing that out correctly. Again, the barn is empty. Here's the barn is empty. This is the basement level. It is very amusing to talk to the staff about the basement level of that house. It's a dirt floor and stone foundation, and none of them want to go down there. They're afraid of snakes. Here is Dave's floor plan rendering of how we envision expanding and the barn and renovating it, as well as the minor renovations in the house for offices. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Here we would take the office that has 2 people in it, and you can see there's 1 door. This is an exterior room, and allow only 1 person in it. Here, instead of 3 people in 1 bedroom, we would add walls and doors to allow 2 people to have office space. Understand, and I've neglected to mention this, understand that everyone who works at SAU 41, who has been our tenant since 2003, and we do prefer to retain them as a tenant in this property because of the benefits to the Hollis taxpayer. Again, with rents as low because we own the property, we can set the rent rates, we benefit the taxpayer. Everyone in the building manages highly confidential materials, student records, employee records, tax records of all kinds, and with this configuration, we greatly improve the ability of employees to protect the confidentiality of those records by being able to work in closed office spaces when it's appropriate for them to do so. Here we've taken a single room 1.5 spaces, a bedroom and the landing of the top of the stairs, where 2 people currently work, but turn them into proper offices where they can work with appropriate confidentiality. The bathtub here goes away. We create a pass-through space so people can exit and enter the building without passing through each other's offices. I'm sorry, not the building, but the office spaces. This is a break room. And again, here is an office that's currently an office and would remain so. Second floor is simply a hallway to go down to the first floor. The middle section of the building has no second floor utility space. I'm going to continue with the house and then visit the barn. Here on the first floor, we see the current spaces vastly reconfigured in order to give everyone who uses those spaces the ability to close their doors. Currently, this area here is a pass-through to the one bathroom in the middle of the floor, but this is someone's office currently. They cannot close these doors without blocking access to the bathrooms. In this configuration, this space becomes a storage space so that the pass-through remains and folks don't have to store all their supplies and such in their offices. So we can see here the main entrance, the office manager, and some other offices made out of what is currently a conference room. Here the basement is no longer used of the house. Dirt floor is left to the wilder members of Hollis's life. And these are the floors for the barn. And I'm suddenly hearing myself talk and wondering if Dave is actually planning to take care of this.
I'm actually going to walk up to the screen if you can follow me up there and just look and point. That might be helpful. So I'm going to start at the basement level. As Tammy said, the basement of the house is unusable, so we'll leave that as unusable. However, the basement of the barn, what we'd like to do is raise the barn up about 1 foot so we get proper height in the basement, and that'll allow us to bring the stairway down and provide 4 different rooms for file storage. Right now, file storage is in the attic of the barn. It's about 1,400 square feet of that 5,600 square feet.
The attic of the house.
The attic of the house, I'm sorry. The attic of the house is 1,400 square feet of that, and so there's really only about 3,800 square feet of office space existing in the house. But this would give us a good amount of space. I'm going by memory, 1,500 square feet in the basement of the barn for new file storage, which would greatly relieve what's going on in the attic, and it would be fireproof, it would be secure. I understand the town needs some file storage also, not just the school, so we could loan some space out to the town for that. The first floor, as Tammy mentioned, is reconfigured. Andy's office goes back in the back, so he has a conference table, so he can meet in private with more than just one person there. We have a new media room.
For the server?
Yeah, file server room, thank you. And storeroom, janitor's closet. Some of these remain the same, and reception remains the same. But this little bitty dinky room right here is currently our conference room, and that becomes a one-person office, which is much better size for that. This is the barn, so the conference room now would be the main part of the barn. There's an office here and chair storage here and an office here and a new bathroom here. Stairway going up. Going up to the second floor, come out of the stairway, I've created a small little media area, conference area where people can gather and collaborate. Then there's an open space right here, so this beautiful door we're going to renovate and put windows into it so that there's a nice space on the second floor where people can really get some work done and still have all this beautiful space. And it's open all the way up to this beautiful big roof of the barn, which has these beautiful timbers in it, these old beautiful timbers which just are screaming to be lived under. And then we have the affordability of 1, 2, 3, 4 more offices on the second floor with storage up here also. So square footage right now, 3,800 square feet of office in the existing house, plus the attic storage brings us up to 5,600.
Approximately.
After it's all said and done, we'll have 8,200 square feet of office area, plus the attic area in the existing house. that 8,200 square feet includes this area in the basement of the barn, but not the attic area in the house.
Excellent. Excellent. One of the elements that our staff, well, the SAU staff, who was, like I said, our long-term tenant, has struggled with is the advent and expansion of digital devices. We are obliged by very heavy state legislation with respect to student privacy, records privacy, as well as protecting all of that from hackers, from ransomware, from the many different attacks on these kinds of data. And in an old house with limited space, it's becoming more and more difficult to have the equipment, to find space for that equipment, and to protect it as it needs to be. You can see in Dave's rendering, not rendering, but the floor plans there, you can see all the doors and walls for these offices. Again, a school staff, a school administration is constantly dealing with highly confidential meetings, highly confidential records, highly confidential information, highly confidential phone calls. And in the new configuration, we have enough space and enough doors and enough walls and enough storage to protect appropriately all of these functions, which are critically important to the health of our school districts. I do want to reemphasize, SAU 41 is a tenant. They have no relationship whatsoever to the ownership of this property. This property belongs to the taxpayers of Hollis. It is under the aegis of the Hollis School District. And we want to see this property not only just maintained in terms of water and paint and such, but also retained and improved so that we're not faced with the kinds of dilemmas, costs, worries that we're seeing, for example, with the old white building that is the original schoolhouse in Hollis, where costs continue to escalate as we think about what could be done with that property. We have a wonderful antique property in our care. It has enormous potential for meeting modern-day commercial needs. It requires an upgrade, and we believe very much that this plan is cost-effective at making this property rentable and saving the Hollis taxpayer ultimately by allowing us to peg rents in a competitive manner so that the Hollis taxpayer is not paying some other property owner a great deal more in order to house tenants. This next slide is a sample of one of the estimates that we received from a contractor. You can see line items there with various figures. We went to numerous experts to gain their estimates for the various costs that we've outlined so far. This is a 2015 or 2016 updated rental analysis that we did. It's pretty extensive. I'm not going to go through all of that. There is no property anywhere within the vicinity that comes close in square footage to meeting our needs, even as they in the current square footage that we're utilizing, let alone the expanded square footage that this plan would give us, that's even remotely close to the kind of costs we're able to keep down with ownership of the property. One thing we did look into a few local properties to see what current rents and ownership rates are like. There is a manufacturing site at the far north end of town that's for sale. It's $1.2 million to purchase. It is an empty shell of a manufacturing site. The fit-up costs would be very, very significant. It is not turnkey ready for office functions. There is a site for rent that just recently housed the Harvest Market. I spoke both with the managers of the market as well as the owner of the property. It is a property that is 11,000 square feet. It can be subdivided. It is $10 per square foot, which is far more than we currently pay for rent as renters I'm sorry, not we, but far more than the SAU pays for rent, which ultimately is what saves the taxpayer money. We are currently renting the space to the SAU for $4.27 a square foot. We looked at a property that was for rent near the Four Corners. There is very, very little space there, very little, and there are some tenants already there who are not leaving. We looked at a property that's for sale out near the farms. It's a very handsome, very beautiful property, lots of parking, but again, the purchase price is $875,000, and there would be very, very significant fit-up costs there to convert the parts of it that are an old house into offices, et cetera. So nothing that we've looked at comes remotely close to the utility of the property we currently own, and by allowing us to upgrade that property, to modernize it and retain the barn and renovate that barn into, again, commercially viable space, we benefit the Hollis taxpayer through the improvement of an asset that's already owned and already has high utility, and we benefit our school districts by offering the tenant that we currently have a better utility for the functions that they have to fulfill, and that keeps everybody's taxes down over time and allows this property to last for many generations to come, as it has lasted for many generations to date. We have some backup materials for the facilities improvement plan that I didn't go over. I feel that this is a lot of data that is hard to present by speaking. I'd be very happy to just flip through it so that it's captured for the cameras, and allow folks to please contact the Hollis School District, the Hollis School Board, with any questions, any comments, any insights, any experiences, points of view. You can reach me at Tammy Fareed at sau41.org. You can go to sau41.org and go through the various district tabs to find the contact information for various board members, for various staff members, the superintendent, and feel free to send us any emails that you'd like to comment on this information. We will be posting it on SAU41's website through the Hollis School District, and hopefully folks will take some time to really comb through it again and let us know what you think. Dave, anything further?
Thanks, Tammy. I think you covered it pretty well.
Excellent. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.